Welcome to this week's Sandpile. This week we're going to talk about proposals, but we'll start off with a little bit of news first. On the BC Academy side, this week we're going to have a tutorial released by Greg Pace called Detecting if a User Has Completed a Web Form. It sounds kind of interesting. It says when someone is in a secure zone on the My Account page, he can show a message that says you still need to complete this information form, with a button that links to the form. And then once that form has been filled out by the user, it would read, thank you for filling out the information form, or whatever words you want to use, or you could just hide it all together. So I think that could be a pretty useful little trick, actually. And I have no updates from the BC Gurus side, and there's nothing new on the BC App Store other than that Currency EX app. I did get a note this morning about the R231 system update that says on the 14th of March, so tomorrow, they're going to roll out the system update. I haven't had a chance, because it came late this morning, I haven't had a chance to really look at that close. But the changes they're indicating say it will send out notification emails should a website get disabled or deleted. And they've also set up a workflow to prevent a website from getting deleted or disabled by accident. So what that looks like, I don't really know, but it's a welcome addition. Expired trial websites will be able to be upgraded or have their expiry period extended right from the site login screen, which I think is also cool. You don't have to dig into the partner portal to do that after this update. The Tell a Friend update is finally coming through. That's been covered a couple, three times. It says they fixed a bug that affected the web app item address search for GB zip codes. So they must have found a bug in the Great Britain zip codes that they fixed. And then they had the ubiquitous several other system features. And someone in the forum, you can perhaps guess who it was, put a comment and said, could you explain this one, please? Because it could be anything, which is actually a reasonable request. But they quite often just put several other features there, and they don't necessarily elaborate. But so anyway, that's supposed to happen tomorrow. So watch for that and see if anything gets affected for you. So this week we're talking about proposals, and I guess I would ask, does anyone have a rock solid proposal that they know works well for them? And if they do, would they share a summary of what works for them, what the layout is? Does anyone have one that just works for them and they just use it over and over and over again? I have one, which I'm going to share with you, but before I did that, I wanted to see if anybody else had one. Anyone? Anyone? Bueller? Anyone? Yeah, Alexandra's indicating she got her proposal from through Brent and the uGurus 10K program, which is going to be more detailed than mine. Although I will say mine is kind of based on some stuff from Brent and a little bit from a few other sources. So they may have some similarities, but there'll definitely be some differences. He's got a great program there, in my opinion, anyway. Do you care to share what works for you, Alexandra? Can't hear you. Let's try that. Okay, go ahead now. I can hear you.
Good. I'm actually here in Maine, and we're in the middle of a blizzard, so it's an exciting night for us. But my proposals have become very detailed, and I recently worked, a couple months back, we launched a very complex website for a nonprofit, a business nonprofit. And one of the people on that board was so impressed with my proposal that he said, I have to meet her because I haven't seen one like this anywhere. And apparently a lot of web people put proposals together so broad, you have no idea what you're buying. So this is very detailed. We take a lot of time to do a lot of research. It's also saved us some problems in that we can, since our proposals are so detailed, I can go back and say that wasn't covered under our proposal. It's not part of the scope. So we can charge X number of dollars to do whatever you want to do, or you can make that decision. But it's really worked in our favor in the long run to have it detailed. And sometimes I put a cover letter with it. Sometimes I don't. Mine's like 18 pages long. It covers everything from soup to nuts, from our process to the platform we work on, which is BC, of course. The whole steps. It has some of the customers that we talk about, some of the customers that we worked with in the past, our payment processing, how we bill people, so that they know what to expect. It has a couple of pages of terms and conditions at the end. So it's very, very detailed. But I would be very hesitant to give it up at this point. So,
yeah, no, fair enough. I like the summary. That's fine. Thanks, Alexandra.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting as we go through mine. I hear a lot of similarities, although not to the same level of detail, and there's reasons for that. We're looking at two different markets. The market that I use this proposal on is between $4,000 and $8,000 websites, not over the 10K group like you're trying to get into. So but it's interesting though to hear the parallels, and I like a lot of the things that you're saying there.
Okay.
So as we go through, maybe when we get to the end, you can offer an opinion on how you think mine flows comparatively. So, yeah, just bring that chat back up now that I don't know. Every time I share my screen, I lose my chat window. So. It's not a bug; it's a feature. All right, so I have these are recommendations. This is my opinion. It's based on experience, and that's all I can really say. But these are my recommendations for a proposal. So start with a framework or a template. You don't run from scratch each and every time. I'm just going to mute you there, Alexandra, because I hear your phone ringing. There we go. So start with a framework or a template for your proposal. It helps with the layout for sure, but more importantly, you won't forget to include sections or services like SEO or help desk type stuff. My other recommendation is never just email the proposal. So I virtually never just send an email. I want to cover it with them live. It doesn't have to be in person. It could be over a screen share session, but I just never just email it and then follow up with them. I always go through it, not line by line, but I go through it page by page with them. I say don't use techie language. Generally speaking, they don't care. They don't care how many terabytes of storage. They don't really care how many of this, how many of that. What they want to know is what it's going to do for their business. So use simple terms and descriptions that relate what you're proposing to their business, not yours. And you'll hopefully see that in my proposal. I say don't have the final cost as the last item in the proposal. So I always insert other information after the cost. And that gives them some time to overcome a bit of sticker shock if they have it before you try and close the call out and see where things go. But at that point, by the time they start to see the price, they should have seen the value being offered. So my, you mentioned yours is quite long. Mine is actually 7 pages as well, which for a small website, some people might feel is long. And get a signed response and initial pages if you feel that's required, but you need to get a signed response, get them to put a pen on paper and get it back to you, either scan and email it or fax it or even mail it if you want. But don't just get a verbal agreement, get a signed agreement back. That should go without saying, but I know lots of folks that work just on a word and would argue that that's been okay for them. But get a signed response, that's a commitment. Set out payment milestones on that document and don't start work without the first payment. So that's based on experience, that's based on being burned. So you'll see in my agreement, I have payment milestones and I do not do anything until I receive the first milestone. So I'm gonna go through this, not quite as if I was presenting this to you, but I'll kind of loosely follow that flow. So this is the first page. I put this on every proposal. It's Mr. whatever their name is, Mr., Ms., Mrs., whatever it is. But I say, thank you for engaging me to discuss a solution for blah, blah, blah website. And from our conversation, I believe the following are the priorities. And I try, this is after about a half hour to an hour phone call or conversation that I've had with them about their website and what their expectations are. Lots of folks will want to do a bunch of discovery first, and certainly if you're up in the 10K and over websites, then I think you probably do need to do discovery before you're going to be able to put a proposal together. In the market that I was dealing with these proposals, and I had a real niche. I was working with keynote speakers and business coaches, so I understood the niche. I understood what they were after. Almost always they were, I've said this before, but they were 25, 30 years in the industry, and they were just setting up their own shingle now. They were retiring from a big corporation or something and wanted to set up their own business. So I had a really good understanding of what they were after, so it didn't take me long to narrow down to what the priorities were. But basically, I restate them back. Now, it's funny enough, in this case, this is a military service organization, a United Service Organization that supports, it's, what do they call it, auxiliary? It's like a military auxiliary. So it's not exactly keynote speaker or business coaches, but similar enough. So I list out 3 to 5 items that I view as most important for them. And what I'm trying to get them to understand is that I heard what they had to say. I understand what they're trying to get to. So it doesn't really matter what they are, but you state them back to them. And I say, hopefully I've captured their priorities. And then carry on and say the rest of the document lays out the process. So I have a scope of work. I do my discovery after the fact, and I've called it who, say, do. Who are you trying to talk to? What do you want to say to them? What do you want them to do? So my entire discovery is based around that. It's conversion-focused websites, and that's how I brand it. It's easy for them to understand, and anytime I refer to who, say, do, they know what I'm talking about. So this section basically just describes that. This deliverables, I'd be surprised, Alexander, if that's not on your document as well. I got that from Brent. So now I note that when I'm done with this discovery, I wind up with about a 20-page document that I give back to them. And I say to them, look, once you have this discovery document, anybody can build your website, because we've defined how you want it to work and what's important to you and why, and who your target market is, and all those things that I take care of in the who, say, do. Then I move on to design. It takes 1 of 2 forms. I have 2 different documents. One is if it's custom, which was a rarity in my industry because of the people I was working with. And the other is template-based. And I basically say that using a template is the most cost-effective way to achieve what they're after. And I will verbally say later, when you have revenue and you have the fortitude and the desire, we can look at building a custom website for you. But out of the gate, it's a template is the way to go, and here's why. I may explain more to them verbally. I generally speaking give them one that I say, this is what I think based on our conversation will work best for you. Here's some other potentials. Now in this case, these are all BC Gurus templates, and that's largely because I had a fairly hefty commitment to BC Gurus, both before I was doing taking care of the website for them, and of course while I was taking care of the website for them. And they were generally speaking good templates for my purposes. I do make a note here that says, please note that these templates are set up for dentists, lawyers, and animals in some cases. There was a veterinary template in there. So you need to imagine how your existing content might fit in there. If they're not quite able to visualize that, I might offer for a small fee to insert make some variations on a template for them. I would just create a new variation of it, change some colors, maybe change some of the images for them, and give them a better feel for how it might work for them. But that was always based on a fee-based thing, because it takes an hour or 2 to make it look good. I talk about mobile, and basically I simply say that they're going to be responsive. We use a framework that's responsive, and we're going to make it look as good as possible on a mobile environment. And we get to content, and what I say is, I'm not a writer. If you feel you are, that's great. But if you're not, we may consider engaging a professional writer, at least for the most important pages. And I'd give them a rough cost, and that it costs anywhere from about $250 to $350 a page for the fellow that I use up in Canada. Now, there's various other options for you, but I would send work to Aaron Rickson, which I would imagine you may have heard his name before, and certainly you have, Alexandra. Great content writer. He's written some of the content on my Digital Link site. I've been very pleased with him, and I've had him write content for my clients. That said, so that's what I was doing, saying, if you feel you have it, great. But if you don't, then let's look at getting a content writer. Now, before I came to work for Chicago Digital full time, the direction I was heading was where I was going to provide a website complete with content. So, and I would price it accordingly. I was going to add enough dollars on there where I could have the content written by someone like an Aaron Rickson, and provide that website completely furnished with content and images. And my goal around that was to stop this issue of waiting to get content, this whole back and forth 3-5 times. And I really felt if I provided them with a complete website with content and images, and then a time frame, I don't really care what it is, 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. If after the website's launched with the content I provided, you want to change to the content, you send it to me and I'll update it, no charge. Knowing 99% of the time there would never be a change, and if there was, it would be very minimal. That was my opinion. So if anybody has a different opinion, I'd be happy to hear about it. But that's the way I think. If I was carrying on as a single entity agency, that's the direction I would go, and bypass all this back and forth for content, waiting for them to send you something which was completely inappropriate for what you're trying to do. You work with them, you go through your discovery document, which is quite elaborate. It's 20 pages of questions where you really understand their business better and their target market. You really are in a great position to either write that content or have that content written for you, and make it conversion focused. So that's the direction I was heading. And if I did hire a content writer, I didn't hire them for the entire website, just the critical pages, just the ones that you feel are going to be for conversions, where you're going to direct traffic to, and you want people to convert once they review that content. I mean, I don't have them write the content for the Contact Us page. So I get a little specific here. I say you're going to create a new website using a selected template, replicating their existing pages. In this case, they had an existing site, and adding the new pages that I described below. Minor changes to color, font, and imagery are included. Significant changes to the selected template are not. So with the market I was dealing with, I tried to be fairly broad, give them some guardrails, and not hold them down to, you have 3 iterations or 2 change requests, or I'll give you 10 pages, not 11. I really tried to be a bit more general than that. And in practice, I never got burned by that. It just tended to work out well. I kind of describe content. It ranges from text to pictures to galleries, PDFs, just so they get a feel for what that is. I define the modules that I'm including in the proposal. So any forms, and I've kind of listed out the forms that we talked about. You're going to have an email newsletter that matches stylistically the existing website. They wanted the photo gallery. They wanted the blog. They wanted to look at contact acquisition. So in their case, they were looking for membership. As I say, it's an auxiliary service for the military. So they were looking for more members. So we talked about contact acquisition. They wanted the place for news. They wanted the members area. So I list out this functionality that they're after. Member directory that's searchable. And I'd help them set up their payment gateway. I'm not going to provide a payment gateway. I'm going to help them set it up. But what I'm trying to give them is a level of comfort that I'm going to help them get this up and running. I do talk a little bit about future functionality, just so they get an idea. This is what's not included: rotating testimonials, ad rotators, FAQs, workflow alerts, media downloads. It's available and can be turned on and configured when you're ready to implement it, but it's not included. A little bit about deliverables: fully functional website, cross-browser tested, blah, blah, blah. I talk specifically about social media. In my case, I was not real interested in touching it. So I did say I will integrate your social media links onto the site in the appropriate places. But setting up the social media pages is out of scope. And I did say, again, think about who I was working with, but I said, if social media platform is important to you, I have 2 or 3 places I can recommend to you that will help you take care of those platforms. Keep in mind, to have it done well is about $1,500 to $2,000 a month. So that's the way I handled that particular thing. If they wanted to take care of their own Facebook page and all the rest of it, that was great. But if they wanted it done professionally, I would either contract it out or point them to someone who could take care of it. And the same with SEO. So I did whatever I could for organic. So structure-wise, making sure that the hierarchy is there, making sure all the right tags are there. I took care of all that. But I didn't do much beyond that. Now, in the discovery, I wind up with a list of keywords. I could scroll back up there maybe. So I talk about, I'm going to try and get about 10 keyword seeds. And then I run that through Google, and I come back, basically, I've got a couple, 3 other tools that I use. I come back with a list about 80 keyword terms that are going to be good and inexpensive and not used much for their content. And that content is those keyword seeds that we're going to use in the content. I'll pass it on to a content writer, or if in the end, if I was writing the content, then that's what I would include. But beyond that, if they want more professional search engine optimization, more consistent, where it's looked at on a monthly basis and such, then I would hire that out. And again, there's a cost associated with that if you want active management of your search engine optimization. I talk about completion. So before the website goes live, I do a quality assurance review. This is to give them some comfort that things are looked at, that it's done in a professional manner, that we look for errors, we look for compatibility, we look for a cross-browser check, we look for errors on the page and the rest of it. I give them a 30-day warranty period from the day the website goes live to make sure the website meets the specifications. And I say to them verbally, I said, like, if you call me on the 32nd day, I'm not going to not do it. I'm not going to charge you for it, but I have to pick a number. Otherwise, you'll come to me in 3 years and say, I found this problem and you need to fix it. Well, who knows what could have happened in the 3 years. So for training, included in this initial project will be 3 system webinar trainings covering the following topics. This is pretty consistent. Sometimes there's more, sometimes there's less. In actual practice, I'm almost never taken up on this, and that's because of the next section. And I do say additional screencast trainings might be delivered to support specific processes. I've had one customer who just could not, for the life of her, get a blog post written properly every time. So I recorded her a process. So every time she goes to write a blog post, she just does a quick 3-minute review of the video, and then she doesn't have any more problems. So then I call my aftercare service virtual webmaster. And I have a monthly charge for this. And in return for that, I basically take care of your website. And I offer a fair bit with it. Again, knowing that the clients I'm dealing with would not have a bunch of changes. They may have some blog posts if they're ambitious. They may have email newsletters go out if they're ambitious. For the most part, they're trying to get their business up and running, so they get their website going, and they may come back around to this later. So sometimes they don't take it out of the gate, and they may pick up on it a year later or 6 months later. But again, I try and give them some guardrails. So I say this service includes things like uploading or updating the content of your site after initial setup, uploading blog posts or articles. I had a contract with an image service, so I would even provide them with images to match their content. Provide basic photo enhancements, cropping, resizing, minor manipulation, loading your content into email newsletters and scheduling the release, because that's so brutally hard in Business Catalyst. Setup and management of auto response email series if they create one. Again, that's a one-time deal really, so it's not that difficult. And reviewing monthly reports and resolving errors when possible to make sure the site maintains the best possible search result position. So under a virtual webmaster proposal, that's what I include. What I do not include is new functionality. So listen, if you didn't have e-commerce out of the gate, if you weren't selling things out of the gate, that wasn't part of the original proposal, I'm not adding that at no charge. That's a change order. That's a new project, if you will. Any items that I've listed as future functionality, such as forums. And I don't actually write the blog posts or case studies or news releases for you, unless it's specifically mentioned in the proposal. So I try and give them just those guardrails, and I found it to be well accepted. So then we come to the project investment website based on the specified template. Scope is outlined above. Here I do give them just a little bit of detail, a little bit of techie stuff. I don't know if it's necessary or not. I just put it there. It's in small print. If they want it, it's there. Put the dollar amount. And this is where they may or may not have sticker shock, and that's fine. Hosting, I have their stuff billed directly to them by Adobe. Lots of people do upcharges and all the rest of it. I didn't want anything to do with it. If their website went down, I didn't want to be trying to chase them for money and having to pay Adobe for it. So I just have Adobe bill them straight, and I'm personally happy with that. That works great for me. And then my virtual webmaster, in this case, it was $100 a month. I was trying to give them a bit of a break because they are a service organization. And the fellow that contracted me for this, I did know him. I used to work for him a long time ago in the telecom industry. And he's, what do they call, in Canada, what do they call the military where it's not, you're not active service, you're reserve, I guess is what it's called here. So he's a member of the reserve there. So I'm trying to give him a bit of a break because it's a good organization. And I've been to lunch many times to the officers' mess there with them. So anyway, that's what I'm saying is don't end on this page. If this is the last page you give them, this is what they're going to remember. They won't remember anything that you told them ahead of time, all the value that you're providing for that money. And that's all they remember is that number. And when they're thinking about it, they're going to compare you with the guy's neighbor at the end of the block who works out of his basement and is going to provide him a WordPress website for $500. And he'll get everything he paid for. So I carry on at that point. Give them some time to absorb that dollar amount and I continue the conversation. So I talk about additional billable items. So unplanned components, ideas, and revisions, it happens. So at this particular, for him, again, my hourly rate was 100. I charge 125 normally. So I was giving him a bit of a break on the hourly rate if necessary. And I bill it a quarter of an hour through my billing and time tracking software. So I mentioned specifically I have time tracking software. It's not just a random bill. I turn a clock on, I turn a clock off. Any additional projects or project modifications will be scoped and bid on a fixed price basis. So if you want to add e-commerce later, there's not an hourly charge for that. It's going to be a project where you have a fixed cost. And then I kind of wind them down a little bit about Digital Inc. So what my aims are, we help companies achieve their business goals by providing professional guidance and execution for design projects while keeping things as simple as possible. My moniker in this agency was I was the simplifier of complex and baffling things. That's the moniker I used to use. Communicating effectively, I talk about I'm trying to get them used to the idea that we're going to be working together. And this is how you're going to contact me. So I have an email, I have a phone number. What I use for meetings, I was using Join Me, and they'd be on a Join Me session at this particular point in time. And then I end on this page, which is the final page. And I just say to them, I said, now they're all done, I'm going to email you this so you can review it as much as you want. When you're finished, you sign this and send it back to me. So I reiterate the cost, the hosting, all the rest of it. I talk about invoices, they're due on receipt. Quick blurb about you may not withhold any amounts, and this is not going to hold up in court, but you're trying to get a commitment from these folks. And I talk specifically about payments, so they're due on completion of deliverables. Agreement signing before work starts, I'm looking for 1/3. In this case, 30-60 days for completion of discovery and the tangible website is in place. Looking for the second third before site launch. And then at site launch, I'm looking for the final third. And that's when monthly hosting and virtual webmaster invoicing begins. So that's the way I've chosen to lay it out. And I've been served well by that over the years. But the key point there is I don't do anything until I receive the first bit of money from them. And then again, I'm asking for a signature. Signature, title, printed, date. It's a contract of some degree. Now, this doesn't have the many pages of terms and conditions and all the rest of that of a more elaborate contract, but this has served me well for several years. So this is a compilation of stuff from Brent Weaver, a little bit from Mike Selander, a little bit from the Graphic Designers Association of Canada, and there was one other source I had which eludes me at this particular point, but I kind of took them all, took what I liked about all of them and mashed them together into this, which I suspect, Alexander, mirrors, at least in concept, what you're doing with the 10K stuff, although I certainly believe yours is more elaborate, right? Yeah, I've got you muted there, but I saw your head nod there, so. And that is my proposal. That's what I've been using for, I haven't done a proposal in well over a year. I've been working for Chicago Digital since January of 2017. So I haven't done a proposal since the fall before that, but I used this proposal for about 4 years and it worked really well for me. So does anybody have any questions, opinions, suggestions? So Jack asks, how much of the discovery do I do before I have a signed contract? So I haven't done the full discovery by any sense of the imagination, and this is where I think I would differ from the 10K thing. The uGurus 10K philosophy is to have multiple interactions. Because you're looking to sell a fairly significant website, there's multiple interactions you want to have with them, multiple touch points. Each time getting them used to working with you, going deeper and deeper with them before you even get to the place where you're going to give them a proposal. And the theory being that, the tire kickers will weed themselves out early. By the time you get to the end of that discovery, your chances of getting a signed proposal from them are significantly higher than they would be. In my case, in the market that I was working with, I could spend a half hour to an hour with them and get a feel for whether I could work with them, whether I thought I could help them, whether they liked me, whether I liked them, and really get an idea for what they're trying to accomplish and really try and boil it down to, again, 3 to 5 things that are important to them. And that would be enough for me to get a contract with them. And then I made sure I had enough time in my discovery process and all the rest of it that I could cover virtually anything that would come up. So if I counted on about 20 hours, if it took 15, great. If it took 25, great. I just knew over time it was going to average out. And 20 hours was lots of time to be going over a website with somebody. And really the discovery document is really around talking about their target market, talking about what conversion looks like for them, talking about the value of a customer for them. Even to that degree, I guess one of the ways I cover some of the cost of a website, when I talk to them, I try and, even in that first hour, I try and get an idea of what the value of a customer is to them. So if they get a new customer, how much does that customer mean to them? And if it's $100, great. If it's $500, that's great. If they don't know, then we come up with a number. But if I can say a new customer to them is, I said this last week, but if a new customer to them is $500 and their website is $7,000, well, then I need to get 14 new customers with the website before that website's paid for. Does that sound reasonable to you? And it takes the big number out of the equation when they realize this is a revenue generation machine. This is a lead generation machine. It's not about having a website. What they need is customers, and a website is a way to do that. So here's how we can go about that. And when I speak to them in those terms, when I speak to them about their business, when I speak to them about what conversion looks like for them, the value of a customer, who their target customer is, when I stick with that, I have a real high close rate. I haven't done an analysis lately, but probably 8 out of 10 of the business deals that I go after. Now, there's some I just don't go after. After I talk to them for an hour, I recognize, can't help you. I'm not the right choice for you, and I have other options that I'll send them to. I certainly have done that, but I'd far rather do that in the first hour than after I've invested many, many more on them. So Alexandra indicates she likes to talk to her prospects long enough to get a strong sense for the size and complexity of the project. Absolutely, yeah. And again, you're dealing in in a much higher end website than I have been in the past year. I build those sites now, but when I was selling them, I was not building those sites. I was really had a fairly narrow niche. So how many interactions, Alexandra, do you feel you're having with a client before you put pen to paper and give them a proposal? Just roughly. It's like 5, 10, 20. I can unmute you, or you can unmute yourself if you'd rather speak. Just let me know.
Okay.
Yeah, there you go. You can talk.
Okay. I usually do like 2 or 3 only because that's as much attention as I can get from the potential client.
Mm-hmm.
I can't stretch it out too far. I know Brent wants us to talk a lot, but sometimes you just can't take that much time of the client's time, or take that much. It can't just take that much of their time before they start getting frustrated and say, "When are you going to send me this proposal, or I'll go with somebody else?" So usually a couple meetings, and once we kind of get through and ask them questions and get into how they want things to work, then they start understanding why we can't put together a proposal right off the bat, because we don't know enough about what they're trying to accomplish. And what I often tell folks is that our websites, we build robust websites that solve real business problems. And then I define those. It could be a branding issue, which some of the websites are so ugly out there, when a customer goes to their website, they misunderstand the company. So we have some branding issues that are going on. Lots of times it's a process improvement situation. Sometimes it's lead generation. Those are the top 3 issues that I see most of the time. Sometimes it's something else. But once they understand that it's not just building a website, there's a lot more to this, and why I'm asking all these questions, even just going through the discovery process, they start catching on to why we're doing this, why we're doing the planning, and that it's worthwhile to take the time to talk about the details of this project. Either whether it's before we put the proposal together or afterwards, and we're starting to get into the discovery and working all of the plan all the way through. And frankly, I wasn't doing very well with my proposals before I took Brent's class. So it's helped me get on much better projects. People take me a lot more seriously putting together the proposals, and it's just turning out much better all the way around.
Yeah, and what I extrapolate out of what you're saying, what I'm hearing you say is, you're speaking to them about their business, not about a website,
yes.
but you're talking about their business problem.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think that's the key in all of this is when you do that, I think you stand out from the 2 or 3 other people they might be looking at that are saying, "Oh, look at this, it's shiny. Watch, this spins, and this changes color when you hover over it." I mean, they don't care about that.
Right. Does it bring me business?
That's right. Does it bring them business, or does it solve a business problem?
Right.
So if you get nothing else out of today's whole session, that's really what I think it's about.
Right.
Cool. Anyone else have an opinion, a comment, some feedback? Yeah, Jack, thanks for the feedback. I appreciate that. And Virtual Webmaster, I don't know where that even came from. I probably got it from somebody else, but it rang for me, and it seems to be just a nice balance between something they can understand and something that's a little bit vague, so I can define it myself if I need to. And generally speaking, for email, for those clients, I was using Business Catalyst for email because generally speaking, they had 2 or 3. And I did not have any problems. I didn't force them on it. If they had their own Gmail accounts or whatever else, that was fine with me. That particular site, actually, they have their email through a local telephone company, and that's just fine with me. But I personally, in those websites, have never had any problems with email. And again, think about who I'm dealing with. I'm not dealing with these larger sites as I am now. In my own agency, I was not dealing with them. So I didn't have any concern about handling email. Hell, my email's my digital ink email is still on Business Catalyst. I don't have any problems with it. I know lots of folks have had it, but I have not seen it. How's that for a long answer for a short question, Jack? be an interesting thing to, as I'm thinking about it through, maybe I'll run a poll another night that asks how many people are using BC versus non-BC, and maybe I'll provide an option for a mix. Or does it really matter? I think if I was carrying on as I am, if I was carrying on with my own stuff today, I would probably shy away from email more and just stay out of it. Because when something happens, email doesn't get delivered, whatever. Invariably, if you wait half an hour to an hour, it fixes itself. But you still got to handle those phone calls. I just typically say, yeah, okay, I'll have a look at it, and then you just wait a little bit of time. Something happened at BC, it's fixed, and then and then I phone them back and say, so how's it going now? Sounds a bit glib, but that's how it's worked for me. So that, again, that's the key. I go through my proposal much like that in a screen share session or in person if they happen to be local. I live in a small town in Canada. There's 100,000 people, so I only have 1 or 2 customers local. The rest are in other places in Canada or in the United States. So I do a lot of stuff over screen share, but I will never just send a proposal, no matter how much they beg. It's just going to fail. If you just send it, if they claim they're in a hurry, all the rest of it, they're just not going to get the value. They're not going to read your proposal. They're going to look at the dollar amount and compare you based on that. And that's, frankly, some of the customers I'll walk away from. Like, if you don't even have time to go through a proposal, how are you going to go through a 20-page discovery document with me to do a good job of your website content? Yeah, Alexandra, thanks. That's a great suggestion. So she's learned that creating a strong summary at the beginning to sell the client on the project. And that summary talks about what business problems you're trying to solve, right? Yeah. That's what I was getting at with my 3 to 5 point thing at the front is my concise summary. These are the problems we're trying to solve, and restating them right at the start, and then going into how we're going to do that. And the bigger the project, the more involved your summary needs to be, of course. But as they say, the bigger the risk, the bigger the reward. I'll think about that, Jack. There's nothing really in there that you couldn't get someplace else. I may strip a bit more out of there, like my contact information and all the rest of that. I'll give it some thought. I'm not particularly opposed to it, but I haven't done it in the past, so I'll have to give it some thought. So I'm going to unmute you there, Alexander, just so you can kind of explain that a bit better.
Well, what I learned, and I learned this from somebody else in 10K who worked for companies that had a lot of RFPs, and I'm starting to get more and more RFPs. I've got one on my desk right now. And what I've learned is if I can't get the client through, when you do an RFP, you're just sending the whole thing in. You don't have a chance to sit down with the client and go through the whole thing page by page. And there's often a committee that's involved because it's often a nonprofit or something like that. So you have to write a really strong summary at the very beginning so that they'll get engaged with your idea and your concept, or they won't read the rest of it. And so I've learned to write really strong summaries. And I learned this from somebody else who was in 10K who did a lot of this kind of stuff. And he sent me a summary that really is working for them. So kind of built it off that. And one of the things they did with their summary, they not only talked about what they wanted to do, but they had little screenshots of what the feature was. So the client could see what it looks like. So, and you can go to the BC Gurus site and take little screenshots and use some of those ideas, put in there. Then if you use those templates, bam, you can make it match. So I've been doing that lately, and it's really helped sell these projects, especially the bigger projects, the RFPs, but even the regular projects that I'm sitting down with the client and going through the proposal with them. I'll often do it this way and capsulize what they're saying. And we can still do a cover letter if we need to, But if I'm sitting down with them, I'm often not doing the cover letter. I'm just going straight into the summary, and then we're going into the proposal. It's very similar to what you've got, except it's expanded.
Mm.
But it's a lot the same thing.
Yeah, and again, I'm not really surprised by that. And then you touch on a point there that I haven't had to deal with myself, and I can certainly see exactly what you're saying. If it's an RFP, like you may not have the chance to sit down with them face to face. So yeah, you absolutely would have to find a way to put that in words that's engaging and enticing enough for them to continue to look through your stuff. How do you stand out from the rest of the respondents to the RFP?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
All right. Does anybody else have a question or opinion? Got about 13 minutes left, 10, 13 minutes. While you're thinking about that, a couple places you can get some more information. If you go to the Sandpile site, in the right sidebar under categories, you can click on classifications, if you will. And I did a quick look on sales, business, and case study. Seemed to bring up some other older Sandpiles that had some related threads to what we talked about today. So that might be good for a little bit of research. And if you go to BC Gurus and you search for proposals, you'll come up with about a half dozen or so decent tutorials, not the least of which is one that Mike and Brent did where it's about an hour long, I think, by the time you finish. And they basically did a full-on discovery process, start to finish, and provided some resources there. And that's large. I got a lot of my information out of that particular one and that particular document. So it's it could be worth you going and spending the time to have a look at that. Interestingly enough, and I'm going to talk to the folks at Chicago Digital about that, there wasn't anything on the BC Academy for that. It's a direction we haven't really chased. BC Academy has been more technical in nature and not necessarily sales and marketing focused. And I'm going to have a discussion with Mike about that when he gets back from his honeymoon. That guy, it's all married off now. So that's some places you can get some more information. Again, I signed up when I first got into the industry. I signed up with the Graphic Designers Association of Canada, and I got, with that sign up, I got their sample proposal, and I liked a lot of the things in that, and some of that shows up in this document today. There's likely similar associations in the United States and Australia and wherever anybody else is from. And with daylight saving time, at least it's light out now. I'm liking that. If there's nothing else on proposals, does anyone have any other questions or things they'd like to maybe chat about in the last 5-10 minutes here? So Jack asked if I know if GDPR is going to affect North American sites at all. The assumption is I know what GDPR is. I don't know that I necessarily do. Is that the Great Britain compliance thing, or is that something else you're talking about? And I guess the short answer is I don't know. But yeah, the EU data protection thing, that's that whole compliance thing that's going on over there. I don't know if that's going to affect. When I saw the folks down at Adobe Max there, they implied that it was around the UK stuff. So my suspicion is it won't affect North America, but I don't know for sure. I don't have a strong feeling for that either way. I'll give that some thought, Bill. It's been asked before, and I don't necessarily mind doing it, so I'll give it some thought. And it again is a compilation of discovery from other sources, so it's not like it's proprietary to me. It's something I've just compiled and used and have it make sense. So. but I'll give it some thought. Mostly it's about getting them to talk about their business, getting them to navel gaze a bit and describe what they, you start to learn why they got into business in the first place, what they think their strong points are, what they think their weak points are. One of the questions I ask is, what are you pretending not to notice? Like, what are you ignoring in your business? Because maybe there's a way that a website can help you solve that. Maybe not, most often not. But you're getting them to talk about their business. Has anyone been on the receiving end of a good proposal in the last year or two? Maybe they were having some work done in their house or in their business, or maybe they, whatever. Has anybody been on the receiving end of a proposal where they thought, wow, this is good? When I first moved into this place, we had the closets done, and I had a local company come in and take care of that for me. I was real impressed with his proposal. And maybe that's just because it was similar in nature to what I did. So he talked a bit about it on the phone. He showed up and we went through and measured everything, talked about my needs, my wants, what problems we were trying to solve. We did all that stuff. He sat down for about an hour and designed up the closets the way they were going to be. He gave me an online demonstration. This is what they're going to look like. I signed here, pressed hard. He showed up 2 weeks later and installed them. I called back a week after that to follow up. I mean, it was a great process. I was really happy with it. As I say, probably because it mirrored what I would present for a website. So. Yeah, that kind of puts a pin in it there, Alexander, where process is important. Clients want to know there's a process for web design. They want to know they're going to be taken care of. And I guess some of the words I use is, I'm going to take you from A to D. And take you A to D to get going. And that helps them recognize that later on, there's going to be an E, F, a G, and all the rest of it. But I'm going to give you a step-by-step process of how we're going to get from here to there. And that's kind of what I try and portray in my document there. They want to know the steps that are going to happen. That gives them some level of comfort. All right, thanks, Bill. See you next week. Well, a small crowd today, and as Penny says, maybe it's related to the daylight savings time. So hopefully if anybody's missed it, they can watch the recording and send any questions they might have. But if there's nothing else, if no one's got anything else to share, I'm just going to call it for this week, and we'll see you next week. Let me look and see what we're talking about next week. So next week, we're going to talk about video recording tools. What do you use? What platforms do you use for distribution? That should be an interesting conversation. You're welcome, Penny. Thank you. I've had experience on a few of them because of BC Academy, because of BC Gurus, because of my customers. I've got some Vimeo, some Vidler, some YouTube experience. I use Premiere Pro for recording. I've had some education in video editing and audio editing, which has helped a bit. So we should have an interesting conversation next week. So I'll see everybody then. Thanks for sharing today, Alexander.